you entered a world, you started out with a bias against women. In fact, you write that the time that you joined Pepsi, every single CEO of the top 500 biggest companies in America was male. I mean, can we just start with some clear instances where you faced some form of bias against you as a woman? Because understanding that, as you say, it may not, you can fight against it. So others who listen to you will find these instances an inspiration and a guide to women who are going through similar biases now, even in India, actually, mainly in India.
So let me, in fact, take you back to when I was born and when I was sort of growing up in India. I sort of came back to me that I was born 8 years after independence. So I was one of the early frame breakers, if you want to call it that. One of the early people who went to the IIMs. I was having a call with IIM Calcutta last week. I was the 11th batch of
Calcutta. I want to say that made all the difference in your life. You owe Calcutta what you are. I have
true,
to add.
Absolutely true. It's Calcutta, the Bengali culture.
Sorry, carry on.
I love it. But I was the 11th batch from IIM Calcutta, the 11th group of students to go through it. And one of the handful of women who graduated from IIM Calcutta. So in so many ways, I was one of the new entrants into the world of business, into the world of professional education. And I was an anomaly, an oddity. At the same time, somebody to be respected, because people looked at me and said, if she could break through a male bastion, there should be something in her. So I also got the respect and the support of certain people in power because they viewed me as, hey, if she could break through all of these barriers, she should be something and we ought to protect her. So I was the beneficiary and the person who was challenged. That's the first point. Once I crossed the oceans and came to the United States.
Can I just interrupt there? A great supporter and a great influence was your grandfather. And there are very emotional bits about that. And of course, your father. And we'll come to your mother as well throughout your life. But your grandfather, you miss him a lot.
Well, I tell you, the biggest breakthrough in my life was that my grandfather and my father basically said the girls are going to be treated on par with all the men because they should be allowed to be educated, they should be allowed to dream, they should be allowed to fly. And I think that made all the difference in the world because we were never held back because of our gender, my sister and I. We were treated on par and in fact encouraged and supported. And my mother in turn had the appropriate foot on the brake, but she also had the foot on the accelerator. So I lucked out from a family perspective.
Yes. So you were saying one where people saw that you're doing this at a time where it was male dominated. That in itself was a kind of a breakthrough. Other significant things that helped you.
You know, the role of mentors. I could not have done it in those days and subsequently because at every point in my life, even when I crossed the oceans and came to the United States, I was one of the very few women in corporate America those days. Now, you know, the numbers are much, much higher. But, you know, when I graduated from Yale School of Management, I think the class was about 25 or 30% women. And in consulting, there were very few women. So at every point, I was breaking the mold of who was being employed, who was rising to senior positions. But at every point in time, a male stepped up and said, I'm going to mentor this person. I'm going to support her. So in a way, again, winning the lottery in its own way, people just leaned in and said, there's something about her we like. Her work ethic, how she looks at issues, how she makes sure that she delivers on time in great quality. I'd like to be viewed as her supporter and her mentor. And right through my life, from my time in India, all the way through the United States, to the final PepsiCo job that I did in corporate America, I've always had extraordinary mentors who stepped up to coach me, develop me, support me, and in turn, I gave them my loyalty. It's a two-way street.
Yes, I must say, that comes out in the book. The mentors that you had, they were, of course, you must have been exceptionally good, and it was great for them to have somebody who worked so well and worked so hard. But they were so kind to you, so many of them. Right from the beginning, I remember you were queuing up sort of against some odds to get your visa to go to America, and you had to queue up from 9 at night and get a token at 6 in the morning.
Yep.
And you had two bosses. One boss came to you late at night and gave you a soup or something, and the next boss came to you at 5 in the morning and gave you a cup of tea or coffee. Tell us about that. I mean, what wonderful people.
No, I was, in those days, going to the United States, getting a visa was very difficult. And you had to queue up outside the U.S. consulate in Chennai at 9 p.m. in the night. So you could get a token in the morning because only 50 interviews were granted every day. And so, I lined up. I was the only woman in the line. And it surprised me that my two bosses at Metro Beer, so Norman Wade and S.L. Rao, came one after the other with either coffee or coffee and breakfast at 5 a.m. in the morning. I mean, everybody in the line was flabbergasted because, what's it about this woman that her bosses show up so kindly and, offer this coffee and breakfast. So I was just incredibly surprised and touched, but it also showed that even though I was not coming back to Metro Beardso, they felt proud that I was going to go do something big, and they felt they should support me and encourage me. So I'm deeply grateful and in awe of what those two men did.